So I want to talk a little bit about these protesters running across the M25, the climate protesters. And I want to share some thoughts with you on things that I've been thinking about, lessons, reflections that I've had. And I hope that in some way they can add some value to the quality of your life. Um, I want to begin. By the way, if you agree with me or disagree, like this is a debate. We can have a conversation. This isn't me kind of telling you what your truth is. This is just me sharing with you my perspective as I've been reflecting on what I've been seeing. So this isn't like I'm right and you're wrong, or you're right and I'm wrong. It's just a debate. We're just having a conversation. So the first thing that I was reflecting on is that to realize the power that the government have and why you need to become successful and why you need to get into positions of power. You know, I'm always influencing people and encouraging people and pushing people to get themselves into positions of power, to get themselves successful, to get themselves into positions of influence, right? And part of the reason why I say this isn't because it's something fun for me, because to become successful, to become influential is difficult, right? You have to make sacrifices, you have to work really hard. It isn't an easy thing to do. But part of the reason why I say this is because, unfortunately, the government have a lot of power, okay, and there are institutions and there are individuals with influence who are making decisions on your behalf that you have no say about. And I say this because if the government make a law and you don't have any power to stop the law, which in most cases you don't. Most of us, unless you've got some influence, unless you can already, or you can gather a huge group of people to support you, unless you are a politician, in most circumstances, you can't really affect bills that are passed or legislation that is passed in parliament, in government, right? And I say this to you because whatever is passed, if a bill or a piece of legislation is passed through the government and it goes through, whether you like it or not, you have to submit to it, or you will be arrested and you will face the consequences. And I say this to you because if a law become if an ideology becomes, or a principle becomes law, then it also becomes culture. It also becomes accepted. Just like, for example, you can't get in your car and not have a seatbelt. Okay, if we went back 70 years ago, you could get in a car and drive it without a seatbelt. It was fine. But it was passed as a law that you cannot get in a car and drive it without a seatbelt. And today, even I will tell you you're an idiot to drive a car without a seatbelt. Why? Because it's become part of the culture. And I'm telling you this, and I was thinking about this, partly because so many of us feel powerless. We feel that we can't do anything about stuff that is happening around the world. And part of the reason, that there are loads of injustices and wrongs that cannot be corrected. And part of it is we're not in positions of power. We don't have any power. We don't have any influence. We cannot do anything about anything. And I tell you this because the government are looking, and the Prime Minister is looking to file an injunction on these protesters. Okay, the government have that much power that an injunction is basically a law that basically stops somebody from doing something that the government don't want them to do. In fact, anyone could file an injunction. You can stop a company from doing certain things. Okay, and so it just shows you the degree as to how less freedom you have, the smaller you are down the chain. And so it is important for you to get yourself to a position where you have influence, to a position where you have power. And the perfect example that I use is David Beckham. Listen, if David Beckham are asked to speak to the Prime Minister of the UK, David Beckham is just a normal guy, grew up on a normal housing estate like the rest of us. But David Beckham is far much more likely to get a meeting with the Prime Minister than I am. Why? We're same human beings. If you cut me, I'll bleed, he'll bleed. Well, the difference is David Beckham has influence and he has reached a high level of success to such a degree that his opinion matters. right, to people who are in positions of power. Now, that doesn't mean that your opinion doesn't matter. Of course it does. But to people in power, your opinion doesn't really matter, right? You are small. Me and you are small ants. So that's the first thing that I was thinking about. The second thing that I was thinking about is that you have to start in your own home. You know, Liam Norton went on Good Morning Britain, and he was who is from Insulate Britain, and he was talking about the fact that, of course, they're doing a good thing and they should protest. And yes, of course, it might go into the M4 and might put people's lives in danger, but it's about the right thing, and the government is about doing the right thing, and the government aren't doing the right thing. And the issue that, and one of the things that we found out, and is a major issue, is that Liam hasn't insulated his own home. So Liam is advocating for everybody in Britain and the government to insulate people's homes, and yet he hasn't done it. So I tell you this because one of the things that, particularly me as Kasim, I've had to really learn is to apply the principles and the lessons that I share with you in my own life. In fact, one of the first things that I said when I first started becoming a coach is that I did not want to share anything with anyone that I either didn't truly believe or I didn't practice in my own life. So everything that I share with you is genuinely the truth. I have no need to persuade you. I have no need to manipulate you. I'm simply sharing with you what I believe and what is the truth for me. If you like it, wonderful. If you don't like it, wonderful. It really makes no difference to me. So it's really important that many of us, we complain about the world is corrupt, other people are bad, there's so much danger, there's so much corruption, there's so much bigotry, there's so much prejudice, there's so much racism, right? We complain about all this stuff, and yet, if you look at our own lives, we have not sorted them out. And looking at I remember I was reading Jordan Peterson's book, and Jordan Peterson said something that I'll never forget. He said, if you want to change the world, why don't you start by cleaning your own bedroom? Because most of us, what we want to do is that we want to go from where we're at, and then we want to go and try to fix an army helicopter. That is where most of us are. Most of us are wanting to go and change the world. And the world is a very complex, a very diverse world. Okay? People are complicated. People have different motives. People have different objectives. People have different scenarios and circumstances. So the life and people are really complicated. There's so many systems and laws in place and prejudices that you can't even dare to think about solving those problems until you've started with your own home, which means you want to look at yourself first. What did Michael Jackson say? Michael Jackson said that if you want to change the world, you got to start with the man in the mirror. Okay? Start with the man in the mirror. That means start in your own house. Sort out your own shit. Things like clean your room. Ensure that your garden is lawn, is mowed. Ensure that you've taxed your own car. Ensure that you've got insurance. Ensure that you've got a positive attitude. All of these things sound so simple, and yet most of us don't do them, and we're pointing and we're saying they shouldn't do this, and they're bad, and they're evil, and yet we haven't sorted out our own house first. Let me take this a bit further. I remember I was listening to a man called Tim Schmidt. Tim Schmidt was one of the co-founders of the Eden Project in Cornwall. And he said something that I'll never forget. He said, when he goes to conferences, a lot of people ask him, how are we going to deal with climate change? How are we going to, stop the ice caps melting? And he said, I always say to people, you don't need to worry about the world. Okay, you don't need to worry about children. You don't need to worry about what's going to happen. All you need to be focused on is about the children that you're going to leave in the world. And that starts with how you are as a parent, as an uncle, as a brother, as a cousin. Because the next generation are going to be looking to you as to the cues about what is important, what is valuable, what should they be fighting for, how should they be behaving, integrity, character, goals. All of those are going to be an extension of the way in which you've lived and I have lived my life. And I'll never forget that. Third thing, there is a price for doing the right thing. Many of us forget that if you want to do the right thing, these guys want to do the right thing. They want to go on the M4. They want to protest. They want to get attention drawn by the media and whatever, by social media, onto this topic of getting homes insulated of climate change. But here's the reality. That comes at cost. Because if you decide, as these guys did, to take it upon yourself to basically go onto a freaking motorway and start stopping off lanes, God forbid somebody were to get killed. God forbid a child, a 16-year-old, a 15-year-old, decided to take it upon themselves to come and join it, and they would run over, right? That conscience would be on you. That accident. I remember I was listening to Liam on the Good Morning Britain. One of the things that they were talking about was the fact that a mother was in her car trying to get to the hospital because of her son, and her son, I think, ended up being paralyzed or something like that because he wasn't able to get to the hospital in time. Don't quote me on that. It's something like that. And I was thinking to myself, wow. So even though you're trying to do a good thing, there is debris that will follow you, that there is consequences, that there is a price that you have to pay for being a good person. And that may mean that whilst you win, somebody else ends up losing. And I say that to you because I just want you to pay attention to that, right? If you, for example, I remember when I was studying Nelson Mandela decided that he was going to go to prison and stay in prison even though he could have been let out, because they offered him to be let out many times, but he decided to stay in prison for that 27, 28 years. But in that time, he wasn't with his wife. He couldn't go anywhere. He had no freedoms. He missed one of his children's funerals. Like, you think about all the things that he had to give up for 27, 28 years. Why? Because he wanted this objective, because he believed in something really strongly. But there was a repercussion on his family. He made a promise to his wife that he was going to be there for her, that he was going to love her, that he was going to look after her. But how can you look after your family and your wife and protect them if you're in prison? Right? And so I think it's really important for us to also note that and to take that into account. The last thing that I want to share with you, which I was thinking about, is that you cannot rely on politicians to save you. As success as a politician is based on popularity and not integrity. It's funny because many of us are still under the illusion that the government is there to help us, that the government is there specifically to manipulate and change the system in such a way that it will help us become winners. I'll never forget a statement that I heard by Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn said that you cannot get rich by demand. And I think what Jim Rohn was trying to say is, look, you can you can become a robber, you can get the government to give you benefits, but the issue that you got is you'll never be free. You're still dependent, and anytime you're dependent on something, that means that they have the power. That means that they have control. That means that they have the ability to remove that which they've given you. Right? And what I would share with you is, and it's something that I myself am constantly trying to work on, is don't let the government be your savior. Don't let the government be the people who are going to come in and give you the answers to your problems. You've got to have a proactive approach. You've got to attack life. You've got to attack situations. You've got to start being strategic. You've got to start making moves, hustling. You've got to start, becoming savvy, reading the right books, getting the right mentors, being in the right place at the right time, watching the right videos, right? Using your willpower, becoming more disciplined. You have to do all these things in order to become the winner that you're capable of becoming. And part of that is you have to take responsibility. Jim Rohn said that the day that you move from childhood to manhood is the day that you take full responsibility for your life. My question to you is how much responsibility are you taking? Are you still blaming your mum? Are you still blaming your government? Are you still blaming your brother, your neighbor, your work colleagues? You know, one of the things that I strongly advocate, and I'm constantly telling people, particularly when it comes to their mental health, is you cannot rely on your boss and your workplace to be responsible for your mental health. You cannot, right? You have to take a proactive approach, and you have to read the right books, take holiday off. You have to fight for your rights. You have to manage your life and ensure, okay, am I taking enough time off? Am I taking enough breaks? Do I need to go into a different company because there's too much stress and anxiety at this company? These are choices that you have to make for yourself. You cannot rely on your boss making these decisions for you, them telling you you need to go on holiday now, or you look as if you're stressed out or you're juggling a lot of things. This cannot be the responsibility of your boss, because if it is, your mental health is going to struggle, right? In life, you have got to do the majority of the lifting. You've got to do the majority of the hard work, the majority of the pushing. And the reality is some of us aren't doing the pushing. Some of us aren't doing the majority of the work. But I encourage you to walk away from that percentage of people who don't put in the work themselves, who don't work hard, who don't discipline themselves, who don't do the things that are difficult. Walk away from that crowd and step into your greatness. That's it. I don't know whether this has been useful for you or not. I hope that it has. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and all that fancy stuff, notification button and all that. Thank you very much for watching. I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.